How y'all doing? Yeah, awesome. I just want to say before we get started how excited I am to host this panel and hang out with these amazing athletes. We were sharing some stories back in the green room, and it's just super inspiring. So I think you're all going to be really into this. I'll jump right into the questions. I'm really excited about these. I'll start with Michael and just ask the question, like, was the reinvention from athlete to business leader just sort of harder than you expected?
Yeah, it was. I anticipated it. I mean, you know when you get into sports that you're going to retire at a very early age. So I was always thinking about, well, what am I going to do next? And, I was always intrigued with business, always intrigued with entrepreneurship. So I became an entrepreneur. And the difficult part was having been an athlete in an individual sport, where you wake up every morning, you know that I am absolutely gifted to do this. Then you realize as an entrepreneur, leading a team, building a business, trying to build a business and lead people, you're like, I'm not actually gifted to do this. So that was a bit of a transition where I had to start to figure out, okay, now how do I lead, depend on other people, which is very difficult when you come from an individual sport.
Colin, I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surrounded by legends here, and so my journey was slightly different, but I was a former professional racing driver. That's from the age of 8. That's all I wanted to do. That's all I cared about, and it didn't happen. I didn't get to the point to my dream, but I was faced with that similar experience of, like, how do I reinvent myself? Importantly, but how do you channel the skills and the leadership lessons you develop at such a young age in a sporting environment into a business environment? And, that constant search for that final 1% of performance or the leadership skills you learn at a young age, just finding a way to channel that in a business setting has been really my sort of calling card in my career. Is that final little bit and channeling everything you learn has been, what I've learned along the way.
Awesome. Sue, what about you?
Yeah, I'm fresh. I'm newly retired, so I'm still figuring that out. I'm still, thank you. The identity piece of it is still kind of happening for me, but two things that I think about is, this is actually like a Derek Jeter quote I read, and he was like, yeah, when I retired, I went from being an old man to a young man. Yeah. And that's how I feel. I was like, all my teammates were in their early 20s, doing TikTok videos. I felt super old. Everybody talked about my age all the time in like the last 3-4 years of my career. And now all of a sudden, I'm young again. And it can be a little scary, because to Michael's point, you don't really know the world of, for me, it's like I don't really know the world of media or of being an entrepreneur or that kind of a thing. But then I'm also starting to realize the expertise and the knowledge I do have from being an athlete for all those years, the work ethic for sure, but the things I picked up in terms of leadership, there's something about that you can bring into the business world that does make you unique. So I'm kind of still navigating it, but so far so good.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, great answers to the questions. This next one, this comes from some experience I had long before I did this current job. I was in the Marine Corps infantry, and I was a combat soldier. So, when I asked this question, which is, do you miss being in the athlete arena? It kind of always rings true to me, because I kind of miss being in the arena. How is that for you all? Are you, adjusting away from the arena well? Do you miss it?
Yep.
I mean, I've had a little head start on both of them. I've been at it for maybe 15 years now. I will tell you the competitive side doesn't go away. It doesn't. It's in the DNA. And so I think that's the big part, is finding a way to channel that in a new way and channel it in the right places, in the right environments that is true to yourself and be authentic. I think that's my firm belief, and if I can impart any advice that I've learned along my way, which is like, tell the story that only you can tell. Be yourself. Bring everything you learned in that sporting environment into the next chapter of your life. And just be you. And I think that's all you can do on this way.
I don't miss it right now. I really don't. And I'll tell you why. I've gotten to this place I've been retired technically almost a year. I will always miss the playoffs. I will always miss that moment where I get to maybe hit a last second shot. I'm just always going to miss it. But I don't miss the other 99.9% of the time where it's a grind. You got to wake up early. You got to eat right. You got to make sure. This weekend would have killed my training. This week, forget it. I would have been done as an athlete. So I'm kind of understanding that you need to go through all that grind to get to the moments that I miss. But since I don't miss the grind necessarily, I'm okay. I'm at peace with it. So that kind of feels settling. But again, I'm fresh. It's like, ask me in a couple of years, and I'm sure But to Colin's point, it's like that competitiveness, I do still feel it. I still search for it. My friends hate playing games with me. So it is what it is.
I don't miss it. I'm 23 years in, so I'm far beyond you guys. I don't miss it. I never missed it. I was really, really fortunate to retire on my own terms. I was still ranked #1 in the world. Probably could have gone on. Yeah, I'm bragging now.
Yeah, congratulations.
But I was ready for a new challenge. I was always motivated by. It wasn't so much the competitiveness for me. It was early in my career. The first 6 years of my career, I just wanted to beat people. It was no greater joy than just beating people. And then the second half of my career, it became more about, making history, doing things that hadn't been done in the sport. And those were my personal goals that had nothing to do with the competition, nothing to do with anyone else. And so when I retired and I became an entrepreneur, became a television commentator, it became my goal to start, to be an award-winning television commentator. And I was able to do that. It became my goal to be a successful entrepreneur and build a globally recognized company in the sports performance space. And I was able to do that. So it's still that for me, just the personal goals that I have for myself. I mean, I'm happy to lose a game of checkers or cards or whatever. I'm just not competitive at all anymore. You can just beat up on me all day.
Never.
I'm good.
Not yet.
Never.
Not yet.
No.
Good. No?
Can't
Never.
lose.
Not yet.
Nah, just wait. Just wait.
It goes
You're
away.
fresh.
Like,
You're fresh.
That's amazing. I don't know that I totally buy it, but we're gonna go with that. So, we talked a little bit about just leadership, leadership through sport, kind of the mindset that it generates. And what do you think? How does that translate to brand building, to your approach? What is it about the kind of competitive athlete's mindset that translates so well to business?
Well, I think for me, and I think for most people, I think you can take as an athlete, it causes you to be extremely introspective and critical, self-critical. So you learn a lot about yourself early on as an athlete, and it causes you to also have to sort of figure out, how do I get the best? Look, in professional sports now, everybody's talented. You're not going to beat anybody just on talent. You hear people talk about how I work harder than everyone else. I'm not really that talented. Bullshit. Everybody's working hard in sport. You can't even be in professional sports if you're not working hard. So, the key is, and for every professional athlete that succeeds and that's able to be successful consistently, it's understanding, how do I get the best from myself? What is it about me? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? How do I get myself in the emotional state and mental state to go in and compete under the sort of pressure that comes with competing in a championship, competing for an Olympic gold medal? And one of the things that was really critical for me in leading teams is, I would have employees that would come to me looking for me to tell them, well, how do I do it? Tell me what you did. And I realized, early on that my job is to help you figure out how to get the best from yourself, but you can't just do what I did. We're different. So I think it's, those are the sorts of things that, absolutely translate to business, and channeling what drives you. That competitiveness, that's what drives you, channeling that to business. Leading people, if that drives you, channeling that, chasing goals, that drives you, and that's certainly what drives me and what drove me as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I would just add on top of that being a professional athlete now is so different than maybe it was 30, 40 years ago. Two of the biggest brands in professional sports are right here on stage, and then there's me. But it's amazing to see they're so multidimensional now, and all of those skills that you see from Sue or from Michael or I was just with Lando Norris, Formula One driver, your personal brand that you've built and all that goes into that, authenticity, thinking about where you spend your time, who you partner with, those are the same skills that require to build a brand after that too. So I'm super fortunate to look after a top 30 brand in the world in Salesforce, and those skills are all the same. What stories are you telling with? How are you partnering? How are you building your narrative? How are you being relevant to what's happening in generative AI, whatever the next thing that comes about? Identical practices. And so for me, it's just about finding a way to kind of take that leap and position it at a blue cloud logo instead of my personal brand. And I think that's what I've learned along the way.
Yeah, I think for me, what I mentioned earlier about realizing I'm actually an expert in something in sports that can then kind of segue into business, it's building teams. My whole life has been about being put with a group of people. You have a common goal. You come from different places. You have different backgrounds, all the differences you can think about, but you have one common goal. and you're trying to figure it out. And as a point guard especially, I started to realize that I was pretty good at it. And for me, I'm a little more introverted in terms of my leadership. But what I have found was, in order to like tap into each individual, understand them, you can kind of bring people together more, and then you can empower them. Because you're only going to be as good as everybody is on the team, right? Like if I'm thriving, but my teammate isn't, what does it matter? And so being able to tap into that and bring out the best in my teammates, that's really where I put a lot of my time as a leader. And then I think what happens is there's a trust that is built. So even in the really difficult times, right, like down 1, 2 seconds, whatever it is, you feel really confident because you know that person has your back. You know there's a trust. And maybe there's a player that's having a crappy game, but in that moment, they hit the game winner because they know they're going to be all right no matter what. You've built that trust. And so that's where I think the team building aspect and the leadership aspect, that can 100% play out in business. Because that's what it is. It's a bunch of different people coming together trying to get a job done.
Man, awesome. This is amazing. And this is going to be a quick question for you all. I mean, you could answer it with one word. It could be kind of a short sentence. But what's the most transferable skill? You know, you think about like all these skills that you built as an athlete. What's the one thing that, you know, individually transferred the best to, you know, to being in business?
Resilience for me.
Passion.
So you got it.
I thought you were going to use a little more than one word.
You can give a longer answer.
Adaptable.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I feel like those are, you know, traits to some degree that we should all aspire to, whether through, you know, athletics or not. But I do find that the athlete, the ability to take those lessons and adapt them to like other things in life is just, you know, greater, I would say, than I don't know, we refer to them as civilians sometimes. Sorry. So.
The only other thing, I just want to add something
yeah.
because it kind of coachable. Like we athletes, we know how to take criticism and we don't take it personal, and I think that's really important too.
If I could build on that too, I think, you know, what separates a top athlete from maybe general society is that ability to get that extra, you mentioned work ethic, or that extra 1%. That is so transferable into the workplace, and you look to hire those individuals. I will pass over a Harvard-educated individual to somebody that comes off a, you know, junior college scenario if I see that 1%, that desire, that extra work ethic. And I think athletes just drip with that work ethic and that expertise. And so that's a huge, huge part for me as well.
Oh, that's amazing. This next question is a little deep. I'm known for that. But, you know, this is a real question for me. It's like all three of you have had amazing careers. How do you avoid living in the kind of shadow of the past success? And how do you sort of reinvent yourself to take on new opportunities? I mean, I just have to imagine when you're Michael Johnson, Sue Bird, Colin Fleming, that it's pretty easy to live under the shadow of the past a little bit. So,
I think for me, a lot of what I did as a player and a lot of what I feel passionate about now is paying it forward for the next generation, especially as a woman athlete. That is so important to me. And I always say, like, I hope in a year, but I hope in 5, 10 years, I'm the like disgruntled older athlete talking about, you know, the basketball player in the WNBA who just signed the first $1 million contract. And I'm like, I didn't make $1 million. I hope I'm that person, because that means I did something, right? Like I had a role in that. My fingerprints are on it. And I think that allows me to look back on my career and enjoy the success, but also understand that whatever successes come in the future, I'm going to continue to have a role in that because, like I said, my fingerprints are all over it. So it's not about living in the past. It's about thinking about the future and knowing I'm a part of it.
I mean, I think there's some great examples out there. Clearly, two on stage here. You look at Kobe Bryant, too. I mean, what made Kobe special when he was playing are the same characteristics that made him special after his career. And it's just another step on the journey. It's just a chapter in your life. Everything that made Sue and Michael is true today as it was when they were performing. And so how do you bring that forward with you into whatever your life takes you is what I look to in my career. Of like everything I learned racing cars, you know, working with Red Bull Energy Drink, learning about one of the master classes in marketing is something I apply on a day-to-day basis in my career.
Yeah, I think, you know, I did spend a fair amount of time in the first sort of 10 years or so after my career trying to get out of the shadow of, which is hard to do when you did your thing in gold shoes, and and everybody's like, everybody's always like, where are the gold shoes, or you want to race, and so that was my identity. But for other people, it never was for me. But I spent probably an inordinate amount of time and probably a bit of an obsession of trying to get from under that and prove myself that I'm not just a great athlete, that I can be a great entrepreneur, that I can be a great television pundit. And I did, but in looking back on it, and at this point in my life, I'm like, I don't need to prove anything to anyone, but I did. I admittedly felt I needed to prove, and I needed to just, sort of escape that. Because personally for me, when I retired and I left it there, I did truly leave it there. I didn't sort of, people often ask me, because both of my world records, have been broken since I retired, and people are like, well, how'd you feel about that? Well, I never introduced myself to anyone as the world record holder. I want other people to introduce me that way. But I tried to make sure that was never really just my identity. So I worked really hard, to just, sort of escape that. But also understanding and knowing that I was so fortunate in what I was able to do in representing my country in 3 different Olympics and get there and win and stand on the top of the podium. That feeling is amazing. And I knew when I left the sport, nothing I ever do is going to be this great. Nothing I do is ever going to be, I'm just going to top this. I'm not even going to try.
Well, Michael set me up really well for the next question here, which is a bit of a personal mantra for me, which is I've always needed to believe that the best thing I've done is in the future. It's just the way I kind of live my life to some degree. And I guess I'm curious for the three of you, what does future success look like as you kind of evolve and lead and grow businesses or grow personal brands? What's next? What are you excited about?
So that's a question for Sue, because she's fresh. So I'm going to just get mine out of the way real quick, because I want to hear what you have to say. I've already done it. That's 23 years in. The future is the past at this point. Now there are things I want to continue to do, but I've done most of it. But yeah, I'm interested, Sue.
I think just understanding that there really isn't a blueprint for a woman's athlete to have this long career, to then go into business. There isn't, I feel like a lot of times in other professional sports, there's somebody you can maybe role model yourself after. But because women's sports has been volatile, I guess, a little up and down and left and right, there is a moment right now around it. And I think I can really be somebody who maybe helps the next generation, again, with this little blueprint. This is what you could do. This is what you could be. And it doesn't have to be one thing. I think a lot of times for women's basketball players specifically, it's been you go into this, or you do broadcasting, which I do like, coaching, which I also like. There's all these lanes. Why can't you be in all the lanes? And I think we've seen that with male athletes. And so for me, I'm really looking forward to breaking that status quo, to reimagining all of it, right? Asking the question, why do we do it this way? And just trying to do it differently and doing in a way that speaks to women, to be honest. Because again, just a lot of things in our life are built through a male lens. That's just traditionally what it's been. So what a unique opportunity with somebody like myself who just finished this career, who has this platform, who's even in Cannes right now speaking to you, to be able to just, again, reimagine all of that and really kind of, I don't know, take over the world or something.
That's amazing.
Cut that up, and that's going to be a clip on YouTube very quickly, by the way.
That's the golden thing that Glenn was referring to in the back.
The golden nugget right there. I'm going to add on something that seems infinitesimally small compared to that. But what I will say is that I've been able to channel maybe whatever personal mantra that I had into the brand of Salesforce and help the company be something special. And that's not just making lots of money, but there's a lot of marketers in the audience here. It's how do I define a lane for Salesforce together with the entire organization to be a platform for change, to think about equality, to think about sustainability, to do things in the right way, not just do it well, but to do good along the way. And I think for me and for the organization, that's what really success looks like, is be a successful organization, but really drive change in society. And I think that's a big part of what Salesforce stands for. And I've been able to have a small role in helping achieve that.
Awesome. We're kind of getting down probably to a final question here. I think, all of us when we're kids to some degree, we play sport. We have kind of this game-winning concept in our mind, whether it's on the basketball court or whatever you love to do, there's this idea of a game winner. And you three all come from vastly different athletic backgrounds and whatnot, but I'm super curious to kind of hear, what was your game winner? What did that look like in your mind? And maybe did you ever achieve it?
Is that like literal,
Deep.
or are we going metaphor? What are
No,
we
it
doing
could be
here?
like literal, like just
yeah.
you know. I mean, Sue. I mean, you're the
Easy. It's a kinda
quintessential
easy one.
story in basketball. You know, it's
Yeah,
like
the
just
3-2-1.
Yeah, the 3-2-1. But like,
There was yeah. Growing up, it's very classic basketball. Growing up, I was the one at the park, 5 seconds on the clock, down one, that whole thing. I mean, I even mentioned it earlier. And I'm really fortunate that I have had a couple of those moments. One in particular was in college. It was the Big East tournament. We actually, I'm not gonna like hype it up at all or tell the whole story, but it was on our home court, but we were the second ranked team in the conference that year. So we had to wear our away jersey. We had to sit on the away side of the court. It was bizarre. And we played against Notre Dame, and I was able to hit a shot at the buzzer. And I've hit game winners, but this one was no time on the clock. And I had to go the length of the court, and it was literally what I did. It was almost identical to what I did in the backyard. Length of the court, 3, 2, 1, fade away over Ruth Riley, bucket. So, or what does Jack Harlow say? Luka knee up, bucket. That was me in the backyard, and then I lived it out my junior year of college. So it was amazing.
yeah, awesome.
There's a go-kart in yours, isn't there? There's definitely a go-kart.
Definitely a go-kart, yes, for sure. No, I think, mine is a little bit different because I wasn't able to achieve what these two have achieved in my career. From a very young age, all I cared about was being Formula 1 world champion. It's all I cared about my entire life. And maybe my game winner is I didn't achieve that. It didn't happen. But I've been able to, I didn't hang on to it. It didn't dominate my life. I wasn't a failure in my mind. I turned it into a very successful career and be able to transfer those skills into something that have had probably a bigger impact on the world than if I won a world championship. And so for me, I look back on that really fondly, and I take great pride in that and say, I did everything. I poured my entire heart and soul into something. It didn't happen. But that doesn't define me. Everything I learned is there. It's true today as it was then. And how do I help make sure that others get that opportunity? I've been super fortunate along the way. How do I reach down and help people along the way that might be in a similar situation? Because for every Sue Bird and every Michael Johnson, there's 7,000 other people that didn't make it. And maybe that's the legacy that I'm hoping to live.
Yeah, for me, it was, as a kid, somebody challenges you to a race, and you take your shoes off and go for it. I'm racing you to that light post. I'm racing you to wherever. Right?
That kid made a bad choice.
And you start to, and the first time I saw the Olympic Games, it was 1984 Olympics in LA, and I thought, yeah, I want to be there. It was a dream. If you would have asked me at that point, given where I came from, my neighborhood in Dallas, Texas, nobody ever went on to do anything significant. I wouldn't have told you that I'm going to do that. I didn't believe that, but I dreamed it. And so having dreamed it and then not really believing that could ever happen to me and having that actually happen to me was amazing.
That's amazing. Well, I backed them into something here, which is probably about the power of dreams a little bit, and I think it's a pretty important thematic. I think athletes know how to dream, kind of imagine something that doesn't exist and then sort of manifest it into the future. So I think that's really special. I think we're out of time. This has been the highlight of my week. It was amazing getting to know the three of these folks, and I hope you took something away from today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So B. Oh, excuse.